Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for welcoming us. We have 3 journalists on stage and 1 person who's representing a corporate side, but she has experience in what we talk about here. And I would like to open up with a very open question. When we talk about values, when we talk about something, whatever you may call it, soft or not concrete or a filling world, what are values to you? And don't mean concrete words that, again, have to be filled with some meaning. I'm trying to clear first, what could a value be? What does it stand for? Can you help me on that?
Is it directed to everyone here, or is do you want to answer? No, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think a value would be like something that, like, furthers enlightenment. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, at least that's how I would frame it. And enlightenment itself is like an important value, at least for us. I think for journalists in general, but hopefully. Yeah, beyond journalism as well. I'm talking about like believing in your customers, in your users, not to be idiots.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is one that seems to be important to you. I'm going to try to pull it a bit further back to the beginning. What do values do in our lives? What do we talk about when we talk about values?
I think that, and hello from me also at the beginning, I think that values are, or the most important thing about values is I think every human being has them, or has values and lives after them, or believes in values. So that's maybe the easiest declination, yeah?
So it has something to do with what you believe in?
Yeah, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Something where you come from, things you learn, things you see, and all that forms the values that you believe in or that you live for, I would say.
Thank you.
As long as you are not an, I don't know, mass murder or whatever.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Yeah. I also think it's something that you stand for, some set of beliefs by which you lead your life, by which you make your decisions, and then there's also those people who seem to have no values because they jump on every opportunity they get and they change their opinion from one day to the other. But then I would ask the question, is this a value too, to lead your life like this?
Could be. So I think it's quite interesting. We're getting to a point where on one hand, it has to do with beliefs, which seems to be soft and open. And on the other hand, it goes all the way to driving your decisions. It drives what you decide. And decisions is the most concrete thing we can do in leadership and in the things we decide to do or not.
I mean,
Susanne.
I think values are guiding our society, and they are the grounding rules how our society works, and that's why it's so important to always look at the values and keep up to those values. And those values, and that's for me also important, are timeless. And when we are talking about the new world of media, like we are running actually, you know, and but there are timeless values, and I think it's super important that at all times we commit to those values and act upon those values. And values like inclusiveness, just to name one.
So as soft as it may be, we relate to it. It drives our decisions. It's what we stand for. All these things are very concrete, I think. And whatever we fill it with probably becomes very subjective, right? So it's a discussion that needs a certain sense for what the other person could mean. Let's go one step more concrete. As I said, we have 3 journalists here. We have 1 person that represents a corporative background. Let's give the one a chance towards the other 3. From a previous discussion with you, I know that you have 6 main values that are written down for Microsoft.
Yes.
that, after what we just said, should guide our decisions, should be something we relate to. Maybe you want to state them shortly, but what I would be more interested in is how do you ensure that these things come into life and become concrete?
So it's like we've got 6 guiding principles. One, and that's for me like a super important one, is the topic fairness. So we need to really make sure the way we set up artificial intelligence systems, the way we set up technology needs to be in a fair way that doesn't allow for bias and that avoids bias. Another one is transparency. A really super interesting one is security and privacy. We further have reliability, so that means that things are working, that are tested, that they are prepared for the unexpected. And the last one is accountability. So if we look at fairness, for example, why is this so important when we talk about media? And just to go like make it a bit bigger for me, in the world of the new media, it's really important because we talk about decision making. And in order to make proper decisions, we need to make sure that at all times our systems are fed with the right data. And one example is that when we looked at facial recognition, we saw that the data gave the best results for white men in the age between 25 to 35. And we need to bring ethics in our development of technology, and we do that at all times and test again and again to make sure that we cater for the whole range of, for example, in facial recognition. Because once you constantly need to really look in detail what data you use to really work with artificial intelligence in the next step. And I think if we look at the panel today, it's about artificial intelligence influencing communication.
Okay. Let's switch to the journalists. I hope that this would mean a little more tension in the discussion, that the 3 journalists stand for different sides of journalism. And therefore, I expect different values behind what you do. And if we look at a double binding, in German it's Zwickmühle, at a double binding situation, like on one hand you need to finance the medias you work with, so we're talking about publicity and so on. And on the other hand, you should stand for free journalism that should be driven by content. How do you deal with this double binding in your situation, Anna, for example?
Maybe just at the beginning I would like to tell you a bit about my newspaper, because maybe not every one of you knows the Presse so well. The Presse is turning 170 years actually next month, so we are quite an old paper. We could call her a really old lady. She's a bit older than the New York Times, for example, or the Wall Street, a bit younger than the Wall Street Journal, I think. And so we are a daily newspaper with 7 editions every day, from Monday to Sunday. And we are, I would say, most people, or if someone on the street, if you would ask someone on the street what we are, they would say we are a conservative paper. That's a word that we don't like so much, because conservative is also always a word that is related to still point, and that you are not so much interested in change, and that's something that we don't like when it comes to describing the Presse. But what we are is, and that's true, we are a more I would say, I wrote it down, a social conservative but economically liberal paper. We are independent from political parties and from every company that exists. But we have a certain tradition that we value, also a Christian, or that we look at, or we need, or we like, or we stand also for Christian values overall. And as now, that's really just very rough summary. And all that is written in a thing that is called Blattlinie, which exists since 1974. So if someone, and why do we have that? It means if someone would like break these values in the newsroom, or someone from outside comes to us and says, hey, you have to do that like that, we have this paper that says, no, that's not how we do it, and we have to stick to this Blattlinie. So some would say that's like a corset that we are living in, but I, as an editor and reporter at the Presse, I'm very happy and I'm very glad that we have this Blattline, because I can say I have to stick to that. And now get very concrete, let's really get very concrete. Example, I don't know if you heard about the Frauenvolksbegehren, which is just on the way again. I don't know the word in English. I would say it's the women, what's the word for Volksbegehren? I should have looked that up. What?
Public
a referendum.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So the second female or women referendum that is coming in Austria, luckily, I would say. When we wrote about this paper, the people who organized this referendum had some points that were very important for them. One of them was, for example, that they want that a woman should have the right to get an abortion for free. And that's something that we discussed in our newsroom, because that's something that it might be on a contrary to some Christian ideas of life or whatever. But then on the other hand, we have 2018. We are not, staying in the whatever 70s or something. And we discussed that in the newsroom, and we said, yeah, but maybe we should also think about, is that really something that we need today? And we should leave maybe old-fashioned values and beliefs we have, and we discussed that, and after all, it was me who wrote an editorial letter that said, there are some points, not only this one, but other points that we have to discuss if it's really important to have that, but after all, it's important to support this referendum, so. And that was okay, and that was good, and I got some letters from readers that were very much surprised that the conservative Presse is in favor for a referendum like that. You know what I mean?
Organizations may evolve. I tried to offer a double binding situation. I'll give you a little more breath, but I want the answer later. Maybe give a chance to Sabrina. Let's go back to this double binding between free press and, on the other hand, you have to make a living. How do you manage that with your values?
Yeah, I mean, if you say free press, then you usually think about freedom of speech. You compare it to countries like China or Turkey, where journalists can't just give their opinion or write what they really think. Or you think of corruption, like companies paying journalists to write certain stories. But I think that is not this Zwickmühle you are talking about, not the main one, at least not in countries like Austria or Germany. I think it's more this conflict of where will journalism lead to? How do you do journalism? Because we have this very old and traditional newspaper in print, and then we have purely digital players like Business Insider or very progressive modern media like Vice.
We still have, but we have a website also. So
it's
not that we're just on print.
No, but it's a different business model. I mean, you have this business model with print ads and sold copies, and that's something that purely digital media don't have. And then they have to find a way to finance journalism. And if we lived in an ideal world, we would certainly don't show any ads on our site, because that would be what readers prefer, but then we couldn't give them the journalism for free. Then we would have to sell them like earlier the newspapers, but then there are so many people who are not ready to pay for journalism anymore, because they are so used to getting all the information for free. And then there is the question if all newspaper or media would switch to this paid models, the subscriber models, then what would be left, which kind of media scene would be left for the people who are not, who don't have the money or who don't see the worth in paying 30 euros a month for a subscription. Which kind of media will they consume? The free media, the blogs, something that's maybe not even made by journalists, people who don't have a blood linear at all. So that's the question. Will we leave the playing field to blogs that anyone can start and write anything which is not proven or, yeah, not even true in many cases?
So you're even underlining the double bindings and the windmills you get in. Markus, let's give you an opportunity. How do you try to deal with
easy
this?
ads? That's the easy answer. I mean, of course, yeah, we are making a living by ads, and also by like having a huge in-house agency, which is called Virtue, which is like the complementary thing for Vice as a media house. It's doing like the same on the agency side of things. But then again, as you were saying, I mean, there's no real double bind as far as I understand it, because there's two definitions of freedom, or two different types of freedom. One is freedom of speech, the other is freedom from financing. And we don't have freedom from financing, of course. We need financing, but we still manage to do independent journalism and content. Not everything that a media house does is journalism. And that's not only for Vice, that's for every media house. I mean, they all do Sudokus and, I don't know, like TV schedules and commentaries and stuff like that. We do as well. I mean, we don't do Sudokus, but we do not journalistic stuff on our website. But we managed to do that without any influence by brands whatsoever, even though we do have that in-house agency, which is like actually the huge part of the company in Austria. We have like 140 employees right now in Vienna alone, and it's 20 people on media and 120 people on like the agency side, which includes PR, which includes video, which includes campaigns, everything from TV spots to like stuff like posters and stuff like that. But they managed to actually feed us. Yeah, but we can, as you were saying, I mean, there's one important aspect. I don't think that like we are in competition with other media houses. I mean, not only, we are in competition with everything on the web. We're in competition with everything on the social web, especially because, when you scroll through your Facebook feed, you don't care if it's by Vice. I mean, maybe you do, I don't know. But you don't care if it's from a media house or if it's like a friend of yours addressing you or whatever it is. If it's like somebody's resharing something or commenting on something. I mean, you do have to be aware that people can get information without media houses by now. People can circumvent media. So it's even more important to be like on point and to give people that additional, I don't know, values or however you want to call it, like additional framing, like Mehrwert, basically, besides the news coverage, you know? So, and we can do that, I guess, without like, being free in terms of people don't have to pay for us, being free in terms of we do whatever we want, but not being free in terms of we have to make a living.
But if I understand you right, your basic argument is if you find your standalone position, then you have a certain liberty to move and take decisions without being too dependent on external influences.
To give you one example, I mean, if we talk about like the customers that our agency has, of course, those are like houses, like companies that we report on. It's something like IKEA, McDonald's, whatever. And of course, there is always that, that problem talking about like. There's like project managers that work on IKEA, and they're always very anxious when we put up an article on IKEA. And they're always, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But still, I mean, that doesn't change a thing. There is this Chinese wall within our company, and we still do it. And the thing is, as you were saying, if we have a USP, then that's the reason why IKEA or McDonald's wants to work with us on an agency side. So if we lose that USP by just doing whatever they want, they wouldn't book us.
Okay.
So when I look at these three answers, I think they're very interesting, because you were talking about the code of ethics, and you were talking about it in regards to content. I think it's a lot to do with in regards to displaying the content and how users can access the content, because we all know that all of the media we are talking about is available online, and it's hugely run by personalized algorithms. So people that approach the website get the content that they really are most interested in. And I think that's where we really need to talk about ethics, and that's where a lot of ethics and values come in. And so it's like Microsoft also has a consumer website like MSN, for example, which is a website with a very broad positioning. And here, for us, for example, it's super important, if you look at the code of ethics, that when you look at personalization, that what the major topic of media at the moment is like those bubbles, those filter bubbles, to avoid them by not using personalization on trending topics and on breakthrough news. And I think that's really important to talk about that sort of value setting when you're talking about the new media nowadays. So how are you doing that how are you discussing with your internal companies in your media, that sort of topic? Are you like, how are you working with personalization of content, and are you making very deliberate decisions not to do certain things, like not to personalize sensitive areas or that sort of stuff?
Actually, you mean when we do stories, or do you mean when we write about companies that use personalized
when you do stories for your website,
yeah.
And you and you present them on your website, then do you use personalization algorithms to show people the content that they are especially interested in, based on customer journey, for example?
I give you the very maybe when you look at ethics, the good answer, but when you look at our success, a very sad answer. We are not doing it well. We are doing it on a very little scale, and actually it's something that me as a reporter, I'm not connected to it, so I don't have a clue about it. But what I know is that we do it really on a very low level, because we don't have the technical expertise and the money and the company behind that is helping us with that. But actually, I don't really know how. I know we do it on Facebook, and we do it with the tools that we can use easily. Yeah? That's true. And I would not say that we are such brave and such a brave company that it would never touch these tools. I have to admit that. Yeah.
I think we are not doing it deliberately, like in terms of, no, I mean really, it's really, of course, probably we are doing it also because it costs money and it takes people to work on that kind of stuff, but also we don't do it because that is part of our mission statement or our proposition, to actually show people not only the filter bubble version of Vice that they would be attracted to, but actually that's something that ad agencies or customers always tried us to do. They always say, why can't we not see the sex stuff? Why can't we not see the sleazy and the druggy stuff? And we say, yeah, well, that's not a choice, because that's how the world is. That's part of the world. You have to be aware when you go on our website, you see news along with sex content. Along with, I'm not talking like topics, in terms of topics, like reporting on sex, articles on sex and stuff like that. But we are not trying to make people like their customized version of Vice where they only see what they want to see. Because that's the most important thing, to actually confront people with stuff they don't want to see.
So you have deliberate mechanisms in place to make sure they see at all times everything.
No, not on the technical side. I know where you're getting, but
exactly.
Yeah, of course. Like if they go on Facebook, they're probably going to see whatever the Facebook algorithm chooses them to see. But then again, I also think that on an editorial side, like from a content standpoint, you can work on that as well. You can try to circumvent disinterest. You know, to give you an example, if you talk about refugees after 2 years of refugee coverage, people will not be that interested unless you find like a totally different approach on stuff. If you do that, you can circumvent it, I guess. You know, we did like a photo story that was called "Everything That Refugees Lost on their like journey." You know, there was just a piece like shoes lying around, also, I don't know, diaries, stuff like that. And that's something that still works now, even after 2 years, of hearing the refugee tag word in the media all the time.
Let's give Sabrina a chance to
Yeah,
let us know how it
I'm wondering if there are that many media, at least in Germany or Europe, that do such a thing, that have a website which is personalized and working with an algorithm. I can think of any. I think most websites are just like that. The front editors put the stories up, and if you go to the website, then you see all the stories that are there. I think it's more like external partners like Facebook or Google or new apps like Update. They are personalized and working with algorithms, but that we can control as a journalist, because we can just put our content out, and who sees it on Facebook is not in our power. Today, probably not many people will see it on Facebook anyway, because Facebook just switched the news feed, and now it's mainly irrelevant for us to reach our readers. So, but maybe that's a good thing, because I think for a few years media just did everything they had to do to be successful on Facebook, to get people to like and share, because then the content would get more readers, and then there would be all those letters and commentary and opinion pieces, where in most cases you could definitely say that the journalist who wrote it didn't think like this or didn't have this opinion, but he knew, okay, yesterday something happened at the soccer championship, and if I write an opinion piece about this angle, then it will go viral. And then they write it, even though it's not necessarily their opinion. So I think maybe it's a good thing that Facebook shut us out.
Okay, so in some way you say the economic side is less professionalized than one may think, and it has its charm, because this way you stay closer to your line and identity.
Well, at least when you talk about personalized algorithms on the websites, this is something that I think is not very far along in Germany.
I would expect 70% to work with. I would expect like 50 to 70% of bigger media to work with that, and it's not only a bad thing. Just to be super clear, that's why they are using it. So it's like, I have here an example for an Austrian website that just offer to advertisers how to work with their, like they've got something on a video topic, and of course that works, because basically what you do is you've got finance through advertising, and you want to position, like you want to reach the target group, and you want to deliver within the target group, and just to make, and that I think is completely okay, as long as you always have this ethic guideline also in technology in your head, and like implement it in your company, so you know what you are doing. So, for example, if you've got algorithms for people that are interested in sports or special music, and you show them more of that music, for me that's completely fine. For me, it's only like really dangerous when it comes to politics and to trending topics. And there are a lot of questions actually on those topics, like how should we educate next generation?
I have to take the role of making the bad guy who chooses which questions we will take up. 14 minutes we have left, and I just try to fit it in with what has been said so far, what we should come to as good as I can. Please forgive me if we can't do all of them, but the one that I would like to take up in order to look ahead a little bit was the third one. Was the how should we educate society, next generation, about media competency? Maybe we can cut it short, each one, by saying a little bit, where do we come from? What has it developed to? So what is different today than it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago? And what do we have to do as a task in order to gain trust and also to gain security in dealing with new media between the ones who serve the content and the ones who consume the contents? So how should we educate society, next generation, about media competency?
I'm not sure, is the question directed towards journalists or towards us as a society? Because, I mean, of course we take a part in that, but...
I tried to build the bridge by saying, if it is about trust, you know, when you talk about values, when we talk about what would it be worth to invest in for the near future and far future in order to build trust, clearance, transparency. I mean, on one hand, we have more transparency than ever because everybody can post anything, right? On the other hand, we have more distrust than ever before in the media.
Right.
So there's a paradox.
Of course, but I think it's because the transparency we're talking about is only on the technical side of things. It's not on the editorial side. And to be very honest, I mean, most of the time, if you look at the biggest news outlets we have, at least in Austria and probably around the world, they are, you know, allegedly objective, but they never really are. And of course, that actually makes people like at least suspicious. Because look at something like Bild Zeitung or Kronenzeitung, I don't know, whichever you want to pick. What they do is they do agenda setting. They do have, of course, they do have a proposition in mind how you should see the story, how it should be framed for all of you, but they disguise it by saying, well, that's just the facts. We're just quoting something or whatever it is. So they're never dedicatedly or very openly subjective. And I think that's something that you could use, at least that's how we do it, to make to gain back the trust. Actually be subjective, but be very open about it. We are at least very subjective, and we always make it clear for you as a reader.
So if you are subjective, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you put it in a context and it's clear where the writer comes from. That's basically what you're saying?
I think so, yeah.
And I think just to jump in here, the transparency part that you mentioned is totally right. I think quality media companies should really rethink the way how they talk to their readers, to their users, and be clear, as clear as and transparent as possible. And that's maybe also the biggest the biggest way to get back this trust from the reader, because then they really have the feeling, okay, they tell me. And that means also to say when you make when you did a mistake, or when you misinterpreted something or something like that. That's one thing I would say that really would help. The other thing is, I think we should also really think about a good and deep education at school, because let's be honest, we all sit here and talk about this topic, and you ask me about the data things, and I'm already like, I'm out already because I don't know it. I'm just an editor. I write my stories, and I don't have this technical background that you probably all of you here have. Yeah. So I think it's very important to give kids already, and also parents, the tools to get what's going on here on the one hand, and then the other thing is also when we look at these different types of media that coming up, like streaming websites like Netflix and something like that, we all learn to live with that, So I think it's also, on the one hand, it's the education and to get more information about it, and on the other hand, it's also getting used to it and talk about it with your kids. What can you do? What is secure? What is not secure? Why shouldn't you maybe, I don't know, pop on a thing on the web where you don't know where it comes from, and things like that. So that's the other side. That's very low level, I would say. Yeah.
Susanne, where should we educate society to?
So it's like I think when we're talking about media competency, I would always suggest to not only be in one stream, like not only like teach people not to only look at Facebook, for example, but like approach a broad set of different sources of media, like Facebook, newsfeed, direct to websites, and also perhaps sometimes printed media or sometimes TV, because we know the young people don't even go into TV anymore, so they get a very broad idea of what is happening out there. I think that's that would, for me, be the one suggestion that I would really make. And the other thing is, don't worry about technology, understand how it works and how mechanisms work. And for me, I think it's super important also on the other side to source, to really understand the sourcing of information and and thus keep the transparency and the trust with the people in the media.
So it's the same argument as Anna said. We should make transparent where we get the information from, how we generate the information, and if we do mistakes, talk about the way we talk.
And keep it broad. For me, that's also like use different channels to build your opinion.
Okay, Sabrina, is there something you would like to add?
Yeah, maybe we should also think about introducing a subject in school, like media competency, you could call it, or just media in general, where the students learn what media there is and how they could recognize fake news, because there are several studies which have shown that a hauntingly high percentage of Facebook users couldn't distinguish a fake news blog from a real journalistic website. So maybe that's where we should start, just teaching kids in school what they should look for, what are signs that something is fishy, and maybe not a big media company, but some crazy guy in a basement with a laptop, I don't know.
Okay, so we have 5 more minutes, so that means more or less 1 minute each. Let's look to the future in order to sum it up. How do we think, it's the last question here, the lowest one, how do we think will media and journalism change in the next years? Do you have an idea about it?
I don't know. I mean, yeah. My literature and German teacher always used to say, only stupid people have all the answers. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. I just know how we try to prepare for the next couple of years. It's not 10 years down the line. And it's probably a combination of all the things that were mentioned before. Like, be transparent, be open. Also, if you discuss stuff, discuss it publicly. I think that, journalism already changed from putting up the piece at the end of your research towards actually putting up all the research in small bits. To give you an example, I mean, the ORF did exactly that. They researched our presidential candidate, Norbert Hofer, who was supposedly involved in an incident in Jerusalem. And he said, he claimed that he saw a woman being shot right there. And so the ORF tried to do research, and, they went into it, and they did a lot of little news bits on that. And they were hugely criticized for that, because some of the information turned out to be wrong. I didn't see that as a problem, because they actually made it very transparent. They said, okay, we did some research, here is the first bit of it. We will do some more until tomorrow, until the day after tomorrow, and actually it works with feedback, You put up a piece, you get feedback from, it's peer reviewing, basically, peer reviewing journalism. So I think that is a good thing, actually, to put it into small bits.
Small bits in order to make it more understandable and more open.
I think the biggest problem that we will have to face in the next couple of years or the next decade is that I think you mentioned it before, is the attention divide that we are facing. Because not only media companies, we heard it already, TV stations and whoever is around in the web is looking for attention of you, of the users, of us. And I think in the future it will be important to know where you put your attention to, because these things here, the brain is not able to get this overload all the time. And I think in the future, there are also some research about that, people who will be the rich people, or the how do you say, the people with the future will be the people who have the ability still to have the power of their over their attention, yeah, and not get extracted every minute of something else. And that's also an interesting thing when it comes to media again, because what does that mean for a media company? What do I want to offer my reader, my user, my viewer? I think that's something that it's kind of something that we will have to think about, and that might shape and change the media companies again.
I think there will be some kind of big revolution that will change the media landscape, as the invention of TV did, as the invention of the internet did, or the mobile revolution. But we, by now, cannot say what it is. It will be something that we now can't even imagine. Maybe it will be something with voice assistants, maybe with artificial intelligence, but the point is we cannot know now what it will be, because we didn't know that there would be an iPhone before, so, and how it would change journalism. So,
but what makes you think that the revolution will come?
Because there is so much progress and the speed in technology is so high, and I think right now it's more like a feeling, because right now it feels like nothing's moving in this direction, and we had smartphones and everything worked out there, but yeah, something will change, because we won't be consuming media like this in 10 years. Okay. I'm sure of that.
Susanne, I'll give you the chance to have the second last words. The last words is going to be with me.
So for me, it's already changing. So there are already software around that's writing articles automated. So like on weather forecasts or on sports, on local news, articles are already written completely automated. For me, it's important to have guiding principles in every media to rein what is going to come for the future, and to make sure that our basic values are incorporated. And it's also really important to be to really like computers can do a lot, but they almost can do all. But we really should think what they should be doing, and I think that's and for that we need to have a nice like a good set of principles, and we need to so we can explore all opportunities that are out there, because we really need to explore them, because they are really exciting.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone joining us here. Thank you for your time here. I think all together we can say things are not necessarily as mean and as planned as they seem from the outside. They're not necessarily what we project into them. Sometimes they just happen, you know. And even the ones that are on the pulse of the development do not necessarily know what comes up and when it will come up. But as long as we talk about the way we talk, and we're very open with it, trust may build. So in this sense, good luck. Bye-bye.